not a headline, it's not a scandal, it's just a 10-second TikTok. Noah Schnapp didn't scream. He just said one sentence, half joking, half serious, and the world finally saw him. But what's the real story? It started long before that, with a boy crying on camera because he couldn't cry in real life, with a character disappearing on screen while the actor was still searching for himself. So how does that silence affect a child? Let's find out. Have you ever felt like you were the quiet one? Not shy, just a little out of place in the room, like you were there, but not quite seen. If that's true for you, then you'll understand Noah Schnapp. Before Netflix, before red carpets, before the word stranger was followed by things, and not just side eyes from classmates, Noah was just a soft-spoken kid growing up in Scarsdale, New York. A twin, a son, a thoughtful boy in a world that often talks too loud for kids like him. Scarsdale is one of those neighborhoods that practically smells like new tennis balls and fresh-cut lawns. You get what I mean. Everything looks good on paper. Great schools, good families, safe sidewalks. But just because a place looks perfect doesn't mean you always feel like you fit inside it. Noah's childhood wasn't tragic. He wasn't running from anything. But there was always this quiet hum inside him that whispered, "You don't see the world the way everyone else does." While other boys were tearing across playgrounds trying to be louder than their friends, Noah was watching, listening, feeling, a little sponge soaking up the moods of every room he walked into. He was the kid who cried over Pixar movies and cereal commercials, the one who asked questions like, "Do dogs get embarrassed?" at the dinner table and actually wanted an answer. He had a twin sister, a loving family, and a brain that moved like 1,000 open tabs, but none of them were about soccer stats. And that stood out, let's be honest. Being sensitive and artistic as a young boy, not exactly a social cheat code in elementary school. Kids don't know what to do with that. Even teachers don't always know. But Noah's parents, they saw him. They didn't push him into baseball. They handed him a script. At 6 years old, he told them he wanted to act. Most parents might have said, "That's cute, honey," and moved on. But they signed him up for acting classes. Real ones. After school, with monologues and breathwork and all the weird theater kid things most 6-year-olds don't even know how to spell. And suddenly, this kid, this boy who didn't quite click with the noise of the world, found a place where quiet wasn't just accepted. It was powerful. In that little black box theater, his emotions weren't too much. They were exactly what the scene needed. Acting didn't give Noah an escape. It gave him a language. And let me tell you, he spoke it fluently. By the time he was 8, he had an agent. You heard that right? 8. Some kids were collecting Pokemon. He was collecting audition sides and headshots. Still going to school, still doing math homework, but now also squeezing in self-tapes and commercial shoots between spelling tests. And you know what? He liked it. The weirdness, the nerves, the pretend, it all made sense to him in a way that real life sometimes didn't. He wasn't trying to be famous. He just finally had somewhere to put all those big feelings. But here's the thing no one warns you about. When you're a soft boy in a loud world, even success doesn't always feel safe. Because being emotional when you're 6 is adorable. When you're 10, it's sensitive. But when you're 12, 13, it starts to sound like an insult. People don't always say it out loud, but the looks change. The comments get sharper. That thing that once made you special now makes you suspicious. So Noah did what a lot of us do. He smiled, he performed. Not just on stage, but in real life too. He became good at being palatable, quiet enough to not cause a scene, talented enough to be admired but not questioned, soft but safe. And inside, that hum never left. That whisper, there's more to you than what they see. He couldn't name it yet. Maybe he didn't have to, because sometimes the truth doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives in fragments. In how your chest tightens when someone looks at you a certain way. In how a role speaks a little too loudly to parts of you you've never said out loud. And as Noah kept walking forward, audition after audition, feeling after feeling, he didn't know it yet, but he was getting closer. Closer to a story that wasn't just about monsters and missing kids. It was about being found in the most unexpected way. And just like that, the casting call came in. A little sci-fi show from Netflix. Small budget, retro vibe, monsters, missing kids, bikes in the woods. Think The Goonies meets The X-Files with a synth soundtrack. No one knew it would explode. No one even expected it to trend. It was just another audition, but it had something Noah couldn't shake. The character's name? Will Byers. Quiet kid, vanishes in the first episode. Spends most of the season trapped in an alternate dimension called the Upside Down. Crying, screaming, terrified. Not exactly the role you imagine when dreaming of your big break. But Noah read the sides, and something about Will felt familiar. Too familiar. He walked into that room, delivered the lines, and walked out. Simple. But on the other side of the table, the casting directors weren't just seeing a talented kid, they were seeing Will. Vulnerable, still, intense. Noah didn't try to do too much. He just was. And Netflix said yes. That yes changed everything. Now here's where it gets interesting. Will Byers wasn't like the other boys in the story. He wasn't the leader like Mike. He wasn't the tough one like Lucas. He wasn't the comic relief like Dustin. And he definitely wasn't the girl magnet like Steve. Will was the outlier. The boy who didn't quite fit. He wasn't into girls. He wasn't into much of anything. He just wanted his friends. And he wanted them badly. Let's pause there. You ever watch a character and feel like they're holding something back? Not because the actor can't go there, but because the character literally can't say it yet? That's Will. From the very beginning, there was a tension in the air every time he looked at Mike. A kind of ache, like he was trying to scream something into the silence but didn't know the language yet. And audiences felt it. They started asking, wait, is Will gay? Not because of any grand declaration. Not because the writers put it on a billboard, but because of how Noah played him, the glances, the stammering, the way Will's sadness never quite left him, even when he was smiling. It was subtle, but it was there, and it was real. And suddenly Will wasn't just a character. He was a mirror for every kid who'd ever felt different but couldn't explain why. One scene in particular lit up the internet. Will, sitting in the back seat of a car, trying to hold it together, while Mike rambled on about 11. Will smiles, barely. His eyes shimmer. He turns toward the window and quietly breaks down. No dramatic music. No big speech. Just a boy, in love with his best friend, crying in silence because he knows it will never be returned. And Noah? He didn't oversell it. He let the heartbreak hang. Let it breathe, and people watching at home, especially queer kids, knew exactly what that felt like. That was the moment Will stopped being a mystery. He was a boy in love, a boy afraid to say it, a boy who had no place to put those feelings except away. Years later, when asked directly, Noah finally confirmed what fans already knew. He said simply, Will is gay. He loves Mike. I think that's been pretty clear. Just like that. No press release. No dramatic headline, just truth, plain and steady. But that's the thing about playing a character like Will. People don't stop at the script, they start looking at the actor. And that question that once hovered over the fictional town of Hawkins began hovering over Noah too. Because the way he played Will wasn't just convincing, it was lived in. Raw, like he wasn't just acting. Like he was drawing from a place inside himself that hadn't been spoken aloud yet. Not fully, not publicly. And audiences are intuitive, especially the ones who've been through it. They know when someone's not just reading lines, they're releasing something. So yeah, Will Byers was clearly in love with Mike. The fans knew it, the cast knew it. And let's be honest, you knew it too. Those side glances, that trembling voice, that one little backseat breakdown that ruined all of us for at least a week? Yeah, that wasn't about friendship bracelets. And Noah? He didn't need to overdo it. He just played the truth. And somehow it hit harder than any monster or demogorgon ever could. That's when people stopped asking, is Will gay? And started wondering, what about Noah? Now here's where things get real. Because the line between actor and character, it started to blur. Not in a dramatic, made-for-TV way. In a quietly undeniable way. And while Will was struggling to say it on screen, Noah, off-screen, was carrying a silence of his own. But the thing about silence is, it doesn't last forever. And sometimes the most powerful thing a person can say doesn't even take 10 seconds. But before we hit record on that moment, let's pause. Because the story that was unfolding wasn't just about identity. It was about timing, about truth, and about what it means to finally take up space, not as a character, but as yourself. And that's exactly where Noah was headed, whether he knew it or not. And then, it happened. No announcement, no press conference, no emotional sit-down interview with Oprah. Just a boy, a phone, and a TikTok that lasted all of 10 seconds. It was January 5th, 2023. Noah posted a video with the caption, "Guess I'm more like Will than I thought." That's it. No fireworks, no dramatic monologue, just a smirk, a little background music, and a line that hit the internet like an emotional gut punch wrapped in Gen Z humor. And the world? It lost its mind, in the best possible way. Fans flooded the comments with hearts, crying emojis, and messages like, "We've been waiting for you. Welcome home. You are loved. You are safe." It wasn't chaos. It wasn't controversy. It was warmth, the kind that makes you believe people can be kind online, after all. Because Noah didn't just come out. He came forward, with grace, with simplicity, with that kind of soft courage that doesn't shout, but doesn't hide either. And honestly, that's what made it powerful. Let's be real. If you grew up watching older generations of celebrities forced to hide, lie, or reveal themselves under media pressure, this felt different. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't a brand pivot. It was just a moment of truth, dropped quietly into the scroll. And in that quiet, millions of people heard him loud and clear. A few days later, in an interview with Variety, Noah said, "I've never felt more free." Simple words, big feeling. He went on to share that his family and close friends had known for a long time. There was no drama behind the scenes, no fallout, just love. But this was the first time he'd shared it publicly. And even though it was just 10 seconds, it lifted something off his chest that had been sitting there for years. Now think about that. Imagine carrying something so central to who you are. Every audition, every interview, every fan event, and knowing that at any moment, someone might ask a question you're not ready to answer. Or worse, one you've been answering with a smile that hides more than it shows. And then one day, you're scrolling through your own drafts on TikTok and think, "You know what? Let's just do it." Click. Post. Done. Of course, some people didn't get it. They asked, wait, was that a joke? Or is this real? Because we've been trained to think big truths need big packaging. But Gen Z, they're flipping the script. And Noah, he basically invented the soft launch coming out. No headlines, no hashtags, just a boy being like, "Yup, that's me. 10 seconds. That's all it took." And yet, somehow, those 10 seconds did what entire magazine covers used to try and fail to do. They made people feel seen. It wasn't just about Noah anymore. It was about the millions of young people watching, thinking, if he can say it, maybe I can too. There was something incredibly honest about how casual it was. Almost funny, like, "Oh, by the way, I'm gay, and also here's a cute dance trend." The internet wasn't laughing at him. They were laughing with him. Because in that moment, he wasn't just a celebrity, he was one of us. One of the weird, anxious, TikTok scrolling, identity figuring out us. And in a media culture obsessed with hot takes and scandal, this was refreshingly human. You know what else was beautiful? His friends. His castmates. No weird tension, no awkward silence, just support. Like, cool, moving on. Want tacos? That's the dream, right? And while we're here, can we just take a moment to appreciate how radically different this is from how it used to be? There was a time when coming out meant PR nightmares, career risks, and front-page drama. But Noah flipped that script in 10 seconds flat, and he did it not because he had to, but because he was ready. And because, deep down, maybe he knew. Someone out there needed to see it done this way. So yeah, it looked casual, but it wasn't careless. It was years of silence, years of fear, years of making himself smaller just to fit into what people expected. And then, one day, he just stopped. Quietly, lovingly, decisively. That TikTok wasn't a mic drop. It was a weight being lifted. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear it. The collective exhale from everyone who's ever kept a truth inside, just waiting for permission to breathe. But here's the part we often miss. That kind of freedom doesn't just arrive. It's earned. through every awkward pause, every half-answered question, every time you smile when you want to cry. So while the world was celebrating Noah's 10-second coming out, they didn't see what it took to get there. And that's where the real story begins. Because behind that smile, behind the filter, the caption, the beat, was a boy who had spent years navigating silence, not because he was ashamed, but because he didn't know when the world would be ready. Turns out, the world didn't need to be ready. He just needed to be. Now, if you thought that one TikTok was the end of the story, you clearly haven't met Gen Z. Coming out isn't the finale, it's the opening act. Because what happened next wasn't just about Noah being free, it was about what he did with that freedom. And spoiler alert, it wasn't hiding. It wasn't stepping back, it was stepping way, way forward. He kept playing Will, of course. That sweet, quiet boy from Hawkins still had more story left. And Noah didn't check out after coming out, he leaned in, hard. In season after season, he added more layers to Will's longing, more nuance to the silence, more ache behind every look. It was like, now that he'd said the truth out loud, he could finally act in peace. But acting wasn't the only thing he stepped into. Out of nowhere, and we do mean nowhere, he launched a snack company. Yeah, you heard that right. While most people his age were still figuring out laundry settings, Noah co-founded To Be Honest, a sustainable snack brand now renamed Do Good Snacks, with a mission to make better-for-you treats that actually taste like something you'd want to eat in public. Because, let's be honest, half the healthy snacks out there taste like regret and cardboard. Noah clearly agreed. So what did he do? Partnered with actual food scientists, talked about climate impact, got on investor calls, while also shooting scenes where he's being chased by monsters with no noses. This kid was multitasking. Gay icon by day, snack mogul by night. And the press? Oh, they ate it up. Pun very much intended. He popped up on the cover of Teen Vogue, Variety, GQ, not as the kid from Stranger Things, but as something bigger, something braver. They started calling him the voice of queer Gen Z, which is a lot of pressure to put on someone who just recently started using moisturizer, but here we are. Articles began comparing him to the likes of Troye Sivan, Timothée Chalamet, and even a young Elliot Page, not because he was trying to be anyone else, but because of how effortlessly himself he was. Let's pause there for a second. That's rare. Like, really rare. We're talking about a young actor who didn't drop a solo album, didn't leak a scandal, didn't reinvent himself with some edgy photo shoot involving snakes and latex. He just showed up, quietly, authentically. Like, hi, I'm Noah, I'm gay, I make chocolate bars now, let's talk about compostable wrappers. And somehow, that landed harder than any headline could. But here's the twist that makes this story even better. Despite all the interviews, all the features, all the sound bites, you'll notice Noah never quite pins himself down with a label. Sure, he said I'm gay, but he's also said, I don't like putting labels on everything. And honestly, that's not him being vague, that's him being real. Because for a lot of young people today, identity isn't a checkbox, it's a spectrum, a journey, a collection of feelings that don't always fit neatly into a drop-down menu. And Noah gets that. More importantly, he lives that. He shows up in interviews with goofy charm, half-buttoned shirts, and the confidence of someone who knows that being soft is a form of strength. He still fumbles his words sometimes, still laughs at himself, still posts chaotic Instagram stories like any other 19-year-old. But beneath all that is someone who has quietly become something he never set out to be. A mirror. Not the kind that demands answers, but the kind that gently reflects whatever truth you're working through. And maybe that's what makes Noah Schnapp such a powerful figure for his generation. Not that he stood on a stage and shouted who he was, but that he made space for the people who haven't figured it out yet. Because let's face it, not everyone wakes up with clarity. Some people are still questioning, still wondering, still afraid to say anything at all. And here's this kid from Scarsdale with soft eyes and sustainable snacks saying, hey, you don't need to know everything to be someone. And in a world constantly screaming, define yourself, right now, in bold font. Noah calmly whispers, you're allowed to just be. That whisper somehow, has echoed louder than any megaphone. And as more headlines piled up, more fans connected, and more young people found the courage to come out quietly, softly, or not at all, something became clear. He didn't need to be the loudest. He just needed to be there. And wouldn't you know it? That's exactly who Will Byers was too. And that's the thing about Noah. He didn't set out to be a symbol. He didn't chase the spotlight. He didn't try to be the face of anything. He just showed up with honesty, with humor. With all the soft edges most celebrities are told to smooth out, somewhere along the way, that quiet presence started shifting something. Because let's be real, we're living in a time where fame is often loud, messy, and frankly exhausting. Everyone's either getting canceled, rebranding, or dropping apology notes in iPhone fonts. Meanwhile, Noah's over here posting about snacks, taking classes at UPenn, and telling his fans, "You're doing great, sweetie." No drama, no scandals, no clickbait chaos, just a teenager who figured out that living truthfully is enough, and sometimes more than enough. And people noticed, especially young people, especially LGBTQ+ teens, trying to navigate the world without a roadmap. Noah didn't position himself as their savior. He didn't make bold declarations like, "I'm here to speak for all of you." What he did was far more radical. He listened, he engaged, he encouraged. Scroll through his Instagram and you'll see messages from fans thanking him for making them feel seen, for giving them courage. He doesn't just send hearts, he takes the time to respond, sometimes with a joke, sometimes with a sincere, "I'm proud of you." On social media, he doesn't use slogans. He just says what he thinks. Sometimes it's just, "You can do it," or "Keep going." No hashtags, no branding, just words that someone might need to hear at the right time. And the stories, they keep coming. He often meets fans in real life, someone shaking in line about to collapse, and says something like, "You guys helped me come out." He doesn't treat it like a photo opportunity. He actually listens, maybe just quietly says, "Thanks for sharing this," and then stays. That's not performance, that's presence. And let's be honest, not every star does that. Some talk about authenticity while being managed within an inch of their lives. But Noah, he actually is what he says he is. Low-key, goofy, thoughtful, a little awkward in the best way, and just real. Maybe that's why people connect to him. He isn't perfect, he's not trying to be. He still trips over words in interviews, still gets overwhelmed, still has moments where the spotlight feels a little too bright, but he owns it. And in doing that, he gives others permission to do the same. Especially those who haven't figured it all out yet. The ones who are still somewhere in between labels, between pronouns, between courage and fear. To them, Noah's not just a celebrity. He's proof that you don't have to shout to be heard, that you don't have to declare everything to belong. He walks into rooms and changes the energy, not because he's loud, but because he's present. And in a culture obsessed with headlines, shock value, and viral chaos, presence is revolutionary. You know what else is revolutionary? Simplicity. Noah's version of advocacy isn't built on speeches or rainbow-colored merch drops. It's built on moments, a comment, a look, a video that makes someone feel less invisible, a consistent reminder that softness is not weakness and visibility doesn't have to be theatrical. He represents the kind of ally we rarely talk about, the one who stands next to you, not in front, not above, not on a stage, but with you. Quietly, steadily, sincerely. And in that space, he's become something bigger than he ever tried to be. He's become a touchstone. Someone you show your little brother and say, "See, you can be like him." Someone you think about on hard days and go, "If Noah can walk through this with grace, maybe I can too." Someone who doesn't need to declare himself a leader to lead. And maybe that's the point. In a world that demands definition, that shouts, "Prove yourself" at every turn, Noah reminds us that simply existing, openly, gently, honestly, can be a form of leadership too. And sometimes that's the most powerful thing you can do. Just be here. Just be you. Because sometimes your presence alone is the very thing someone else needed to believe they belong. You remember that scene, Will Byers in the back of a car, windows foggy, heartbreaking in real time. Mike is talking, rambling really about 11 or something completely irrelevant, and Will is just holding it all in. His smile doesn't quite land. His eyes start to fill. He turns toward the window like he's looking for a way out. And then, quietly, completely, he breaks. No words, just a tear, just truth. And let's be honest, we've all had that window moment. Maybe not in a car, maybe it was at school, in your room, or behind a bathroom door. That moment where your chest gets tight, your mouth can't find the words, and all you want is for someone to notice, without making you explain it. For Will, that moment played out on screen. For Noah, it played out over years. He smiled through interviews, wore the clothes, said the lines, showed up for fans. And all the while there was this part of him, so true, so heavy, that stayed just under the surface, not hidden out of shame. Just waiting. Waiting for the right time. The right breath, the right 10 seconds of courage. And when he finally posted that TikTok, half joke, half truth, all heart, it landed like a quiet thunderclap. Not because it was flashy, but because it was real. He didn't owe us that moment, and yet he gave it. And fans, they gave something back. They filled the comment sections, not just with Yas King and rainbow hearts, but with stories. Real ones. From people who had never said it out loud before. People who hadn't even said it to themselves. Suddenly, someone like Noah had made space for someone like them to exist, just a little more freely. You see, we often talk about representation like it has to be bold and branded. But sometimes it looks like a boy sitting in his room finally pressing post. No confetti, just clarity. And listen, maybe you're not there yet. Maybe you're still figuring it out. Maybe you've rehearsed the words 100 times and still can't get them past your lips. Maybe you feel like you'll never be ready. And if that's where you are right now, that's okay. Seriously, that is more than okay. Because being honest with yourself isn't a sprint. It's not a race to a finish line. It's a series of small, quiet moments where you choose not to run anymore, where you look in the mirror, not for answers, but for gentleness. And maybe today, your version of courage isn't a TikTok. Maybe it's texting a friend, or changing your lock screen, or Googling a term you're curious about and not clearing your history for once. Those count. They matter. Noah didn't become a symbol because he had all the answers. He became one because he finally said, "This is me." Softly, smiling, vulnerable. And by doing that, he told the rest of us, you can get here too, in your way, in your time. And sure, he's not perfect. He still gets nervous, still says awkward things, still posts the occasional photo where the lighting's just confusing. But he's trying. And in that trying, he's giving permission for others to try too. So if you're watching this right now, on your bed, in your room, scrolling at midnight with the volume low, maybe this is the part you were supposed to hear. You don't need to be loud to be valid. You don't need to be certain to be brave. You don't need to have the words ready to start becoming who you are. And if you're scared, guess what? So was he. That kid in the Netflix show. The one who cried in the backseat. The one who smiled through questions. The one who finally, one day, clicked record and said, "Guess I'm more like Will than I thought." That kid was scared too, and he did it anyway. And now you're here, watching, wondering if it's your turn, wondering if you're next. Maybe you are, or maybe not today. But when the moment comes, when your voice gets shaky and your heart beats faster and you feel that shift in your gut, you'll remember this. You don't have to be a headline. You don't have to be a movement. You just have to be you. And that's enough. And if no one said it to you today, let me be the first. You're allowed to take your time. You're allowed to be confused. You're allowed to be exactly where you are right now. And yes, some people have loud coming out stories, fireworks, applause, rainbow, everything. But others, they come out in whispers, in journal entries, in playlists, in the quiet decision to stop pretending, even if it's just in their own head. And both are valid. So maybe your version of Noah's TikTok isn't public. Maybe it's just you lying in bed tonight hearing your own voice say, "I think I might be." That's enough. That's brave. That's a beginning. And hey, if that moment doesn't come today, that's okay too. Sometimes we don't come out. Sometimes we become. Slowly, silently, authentically. And if the world ever makes you feel like you're taking too long or you should be further along in your journey, just look at Noah. he waited. He listened to himself. And when he finally spoke, he did it on his own terms, with a smirk, with a phone, and with zero drama. If that's not Gen Z excellence, I don't know what is. You might never cry in a fictional car like Will, you might never post a TikTok like Noah, but maybe, just maybe, you'll find your own version of that moment. And when you do, I hope you give yourself the grace to feel it fully. No pressure, no rush, just truth when you're ready. And until then, stay curious, stay kind, stay exactly who you are. Because even if the world doesn't always know what to do with that, someone watching this video does. We see you, we hear you, and we're glad you're here. This isn't just Noah's story. It's a reminder that being true to yourself, quietly, awkwardly, and bravely, is enough. If this makes you feel less alone, let us know. Leave a comment, share your story, or just a simple me too. Someone out there might need it more than you think. And if you're still struggling to find answers, you've come to the right place. No pressure, no deadline, just people who get it. And hey, if this video popped up on your feed, it probably came at the right time. Thanks for watching, and thanks for being who you are.